What is up, my fellow parents? Hey, we all want to be successful parents. We want to raise successful kids. And Jordan, I love you, man. When I view you, I think of you as just in high regard. I view you as somebody you're very successful. You have a happy marriage, you got great kids, you do well financially. You're on the Weather Channel. And so when you think about raising, your kids, do you want to raise successful kids?
First off, man, thanks for that. That was really nice of you to say that. I'm
Okay.
honored that you think that of me. Rarely do we look at our own lives and think that we're successful. We're always chasing something, right?
Hmm.
And the reality is when we step away, we can be like, no, whatever it is, you're successful in parenting, you have a successful marriage. Sometimes it's good to take a step out of whatever it is you're in to see how you're doing because
Yeah.
we're always chasing something. And
Yeah.
our goal right now as parents is to like get our kids successful, but I mean, hopefully, right now you already have successful kids. Maybe they're thriving in a sport or they're thriving in school and they've got great friends. Like, it's important for us to really understand that that's beautiful. And then the ultimate goal is to, yeah, get them successful, whatever success means to you, right? It doesn't have to be they make $1 million a year, they go to the most prestigious school. It can be that, but I think being successful is just making sure that they have a happy, well rounded life. That's what I want.
I don't know if you can tell. I'm actually like exploding and jumping out of my chair right now because I could not agree with you anymore. We have an episode here called How to Raise Successful Kids. We're going to share with you some stats and some research. But what you just said is so important. We must have and create a healthy definition of success in our own minds for our children. It doesn't matter what Inc.com, what Time Magazine, what the Wall Street Journal says. It doesn't matter what the doctor who lives down the street. It doesn't matter who your neighbor whose daughter was just valedictorian says. We all get to and must create a definition of what is success in our minds. I think that is so key anytime you think about successful kids.
Yeah, me too. And, it's not like it's a bar we have to get to. It's not like, okay, if you get C's and you get this 2.0 grade through college or high school, you get a
Yeah.
degree and you've
Yeah.
become successful at that, we
Yeah.
don't and maybe it's a bar we constantly move,
Yeah.
but I think it's important for us to give praise where praise is due throughout the process.
Yeah. Here's a personal story. When my daughter was in sophomore and junior year, she had mostly A's and she wanted to go to college and she was on the track. We were brainstorming about her going to San Diego State, right? Our hometown. And then she
Home of the
tells us
Aztecs.
she doesn't want to go to college. So she starts a career. She gets a promotion. She gets another promotion. She gets another promotion. And she's rocking it as an 18-year-old in her sales career right out of high school. And I'm like, wow, this is just wonderful. And long story short, she tells us she is going to quit her job. She's burnt out. She's overworked and she doesn't feel good. She doesn't feel good.
Mm.
And she says, you know what? I think I just want to be a mom. I want to get
Oh,
married and
wow.
I want to be a mom. And she's 18. She's not dating anybody.
Right, right,
Right?
right.
And so I don't care
That's
what
interesting.
Harvard says or Stanford, or I don't care what anyone says. She's developing her own vision of success and a vision
Mhm.
for her life. And good for her. I want to
That is
support
great.
her. I want my kids' dreams to come true. And that is as we already know, the research supports that the stay at home parent, specifically a stay at home mother, even more than that, is like one of the foundations of society. So, what is success to you? We get to decide.
We get to decide, and and I would say, fortunately, we get to choose what we want it to be for our kids and for our family because
Mhm.
society will choose the negative version. If you were to tell that
Mhm.
story
Yeah.
to, let's say, quote unquote, society, they would say, "Oh, your daughter's a failure. She wanted to go to college, she
Right.
didn't, or she dropped
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
She had a great job, then she quit. She
Yeah.
moved back in." There's all sorts
Mhm.
of signs that says society would say that's a
Mhm.
failure. Oh, you just want to
Mhm.
be a mom? You don't want to like do anything in this world?
Mhm.
And the reality is, don't listen to any of that noise
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that is just what it is. It's noise.
Yes, it is, and the stay-at-home parent role is so beautiful, it's so
Yes,
valued,
it
it's
is. It's
so
amazing.
impactful. It's like the reason why you can think about it this way. It's like this is not where we're going with this episode, but we're planning on it. But we always think about? We think about, yeah, like I stay home, um, and that way my husband or my co-parent or my wife in some circumstances, I stay home so that they can go to work and
Sure.
we don't have to pay for babysitters. But you know what?
Ross Kimball talked about that in the last episode. He was talking about how he
Yeah,
had to do a lot of the stay-at-home stuff too.
yeah. But how about this? What if we were just to flip the conversation and
Okay.
say this? You know what? I go to work at my job as a man,
Right.
and I work my butt off in a job I don't really love, but I
Right.
do it because I want to give my kids the opportunity to grow up with a stay-at-home parent. You know that?
Yes.
How about that? We don't
That's
talk about
big.
that very
Right.
often.
Well, actually, we are mindful about that and try and talk about that in our household so the kids
Yeah,
understand,
right.
especially when they'll be like, "Well, mom, you don't do anything. Dad just works." And it's like,
Oh,
"Hold up a
hold
second.
up.
Hold up
Hold
a
up.
second."
Yeah,
Yeah, we are blessed to have this. I mean, this is what life used to look like back in the day for so many families. A
right.
one working adult and the other
Yes.
stays home and takes care of the family. Unfortunately, with the way
Mhm.
society is, with
Yep.
inflation, with the price of everything, with the judgment of others and feeling like you
Mhm.
have to get a degree and have to get a job and have to do something, it
Yep.
creates people, sadness. I see,
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
single, you know, would want to be moms, right? These people who are out there wanting to find someone and they're working and there's no meaning. And so I think the reality is where you're trying to get to this is just like how we provide success can be different for every family, for every
Yeah.
household, for every person.
Yeah, man. I mean, we were living our first house we bought was a foreclosed home, because we couldn't afford anything else, and it wasn't in a great neighborhood. And we had 2 used cars. One of the cars I was driving was because a family in church gave us a $10,000 gift because my
Oh, that's
car, my
awesome.
Toyota Camry, died, and they saw that we were a young hurting family, and so they gave us 10 grand. So I put that 10 grand into buying a used truck, and we lived modestly because we wanted Danielle to be a stay-at-home mom. That's what she wanted to do.
Hmm.
And I didn't pressure her to go work. I said, look, if that means we have to, move to a different neighborhood, that is what success. But now let's transition. Here's what we're going to do today. We're going to read through little snippets from this really interesting and I think cool article by Bill Murphy from Inc.com. It's called How to Raise Successful Kids. And here's the headline. Jordan, here we go. Here's a little hook. Jordan, if I were to tell you that hold on, let me change my tone, but that kind of sounds like a salesman right now. Actually, I'm
Game
going to do
show
it 2
host.
times. A game show host. I'm just going to continue. Jordan, if I were to tell you that you can increase the odds that your kids will achieve great success in life. Oh my
You
God.
would be a terrible game show
Oh
host.
my. Coughing. Okay, change the tone. Let me try again. All right, man. If I were to tell you, I'll do it like a nerdy
Radio
scientist.
host. How about a radio host?
Okay, if I were to, okay. Well, we actually are radio hosts. So
Yeah.
if I were to tell you, no, if I were to tell you that you could increase the odds that your kids will achieve great success in life, maybe even greater than you've had, simply by making a small change in how you talk to them and
Oh,
talk about achievement, would you be interested?
100%.
Right?
It's
That's
those headlines that'll get me to read because it's
yeah.
like
That's a
one
hook.
small act you do now, let's say every day, could ultimately provide success in the future. Heck yes.
Yeah,
It's like
buddy.
those ones like, if you eat this one little thing every day, you will be healthy for the rest of your life. I'm like, what is
Right.
that thing?
Yeah,
Oh,
that
it's a kale? Okay, I'm gonna eat kale every day now.
yeah, that's what they call like in media here is that's the hook. So and what's interesting here is that there is research and it turns out you can. And I'm going to share this article with you and we're just going to talk about it and here's what we're going to do. We're going to ask each other throughout this article, do you do this with your kids or not? And I'm just going to be honest with you.
First off, do you agree with what he says?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I
All
mean,
right.
I've been
Well,
deep
good. That's
into
good to know. The family coach
motivational.
agrees.
Yeah, I've been deep into motivational psychology and how to motivate children and all this stuff for a long time. So yeah, I wouldn't pick an
Right.
article, some shady article like this sucks. Don't do it. That'd be a waste of our time. So I'm just going to read you little bits of it. But here is the theme of the article: is um, let's just talk. What do you think is the most common way, Jordan, that everyday good parents they praise their kids? Like, what are some common things, like without guessing what the article is
I'm
going to
so
say?
proud of you. You did so great
Yeah.
today, playing
Hmm.
basketball. Or,
Hmm.
I'm so glad that you were so nice to that kid on the playground. That was really sweet. Thanks for doing that. You're such a great person. Hey,
Mhm.
thanks for taking care of your brother while I was vacuuming the house. Like that really helps me out. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. And then I think something I hear a lot of when my team and I do consult calls because have a really vibrant VIP membership. I mean, if you want to see your parenting change, if you want to see your entire home change, just come and join me in my VIP membership. And what happens is when they do these consult call, the parents will call and they say, "Yeah, my kid is so smart. I tell her all the time, she's so smart. My son is smart. I don't understand why he's doing this." So they say, "You're so smart." That's another common thing, calling kids smart.
Mm,
Let's just put all that up in the air and let's see what the research says about that. Can I continue?
sure.
All right. It's about how we praise our kids for their accomplishments, Bill writes. An emerging and exciting body of research on the subject suggests several key things we might not have realized otherwise. You ready for this? Here's 3 points, and then we'll talk about them. Ready? Number one, praising kids merely for their innate abilities, such as their intelligence, you're so smart, actually makes it less likely that they'll grow up to enjoy learning and to excel.
Okay.
That's, I mean, that's pretty deep what I just said. Do you understand how heavy what I just said was?
Well, it's counterintuitive to the way we think we should be praising, right? It's like
Hmm.
sometimes kids will come home and like, I'm so stupid, I don't get it. And you
Hmm.
have to be like, no, 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 no. You're incredibly smart.
Yep.
You can get
Yep.
this. You're
Yep.
just frustrated right now. So
Yep.
I'm trying to give praise and let them know that they are smart because
Hmm.
they are telling themselves they're not.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we have good intentions. We're trying to
Right.
motivate them. We're trying to build their self esteem by telling them they're smart, they're good, they're strong, they're
Right.
beautiful. Number
Right.
two, praising kids instead for the strategies and the processes they develop to solve problems, even when they don't fully succeed, makes them more likely to try harder and ultimately achieve. How would you
So you're
paraphrase that into something more
commenting
simple?
on the process of becoming smart in this
Hmm.
case.
Yeah. So what? Yep. So what they're saying, number one, if you praise your kid for their innate abilities, the research shows they're going to be less likely
Right.
to enjoy learning and excel. But
Right.
good news, praising kids for their strategies and their processes actually makes it more likely they're going to try harder and succeed. Interesting, huh?
Yeah. It is interesting. I have a talk with my son the other day about the process of putting in the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
What were we
Mm-hmm.
talking about? We were talking about, oh, going out and doing something over the weekend. He's like, no, that's boring. No, that's boring. No, I don't like that. And everything. And I'm like, well, you've never given it a try. Why is it so hard for you to try the process to see if it's going to be fun? Because so many kids right now want instantaneous fun. They want that dopamine rush. And so really, looking at, and then I had to give him a compliment. I'm like, you know what, you do so good in gymnastics. You took months to learn the what's the little square thing? Rubik's Cube. He learned the whole Rubik's Cube. I still don't know how to do the dang Rubik's Cube.
I
And I
mean,
saw him
no,
put in
no
the
way.
dedication. It took him months. And I'm like, dude, you did so good with, so I had to make sure I praised the process of those very long tasks as well, even though he was giving me, what, about trying to get instantaneous fun.
Good. And we'll talk about some things to say to do this in a few minutes.
Okay.
Here's number three, and perhaps the kicker. Bill writes, I like that. Perhaps the kicker. The effects of these praise strategies can be quantified, even when talking about children as young as 1 to 3 years of
What? How did they
age.
get that data? That's ridiculous.
I know
No,
that
come
is, I
on.
know it's too
That's
much.
ridiculous.
So, once again, my 15-year-old daughter, Bill writes, will get the benefit of something I've learned while writing for ink. Okay, I think that's a joke. Let's see what he says here. All right. As you might imagine, this would mean that the so called experts who told us to praise our kids endlessly, remember that? That was a big movement like 10 years ago.
Yeah. That's because there
Praising
was a
them.
lot of I don't know if hatred's the right word, but there was a lot of putting down. And so we had to counter that by lifting up. And this is we
Yeah.
only thought like just lift up. Oh no, you're beautiful. You're so beautiful. You're so pretty, even though
Well
others were like, you're
said.
so ugly, right? So
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
just try to counter.
Yeah. It's almost like there was this big parenting movement that happened. I think it started 15 years ago, maybe 20. And yeah, it was like, we could be so negative. There was a ton of
Right.
research about how trauma and parents are traumatizing their kids. And so all these parents, including me, were like, okay, positivity only,
Yep.
right?
Correct.
And
Right.
we're like, I'm not going to be like my grandpa or my negative mom. I'm going to be
Yeah.
so positive. Participation trophies and all this
Correct.
stuff. All right. So and then what happened is thankfully, you had these really smart researchers like Carol Dweck, professor of psychology at Stanford University. And she came out and she was like, okay, let's calm it down. Let's balance this and let's examine this difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. So many kids that are struggling, the reason why they're struggling is because they have a fixed mindset. It's how they think about school, how they think about their lives. And that is key. And then you have to wonder, why does my kid have a fixed mindset? Well, maybe it's because of how you've been parenting them. The research says has maybe potentially added to that and contributed to that. That might sting a little bit to hear, but that's kind of what the research is pointing to, Jordan.
Yeah, and it makes sense. But my question is, if we are supposed to praise on the not the outcome, but the
Yeah.
process, let's
Yes, the
say,
process. Yeah.
um, we've become kind of like a second chance nation where it's like, oh, it's okay, you'll do better next time. Oh, you know what,
Mm-hmm.
you didn't get it? That's okay. Try again. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
you were just mean to that person? That's okay. Don't do it next time. Here's a second chance.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
sometimes I feel like we need to like getting held by the collar and say, what you did was bad.
That's good.
You
That's
need
good.
to realize that. And
Yes.
yes, you're going to start over, but I'm not going to be always light and fluffy. I need to like smack you in the face a little bit, not physically, of course, but just like wake up. What you're doing is on a track for failure. Let's, almost like a firm approach.
Okay. There's so many things I love about what you're saying. One of the reasons I love what you're saying, and hope everyone that just heard that is really tuning in, because sometimes people like me that are like in this industry of family coaching or like psychology, we fluff up our words quite a bit. It's like sugar and spice. We say things like people like me say things and other people go, "Oh, I wish I could say it like that." Right? Do you agree?
I do that all the time. I'm like, man, they said it so eloquently. I wish I
Right.
had those words.
But what I love about what you said is that's real talk right there. Like that is an example of how to do growth mindset in everyday like living. Let me just keep saying one more thing.
Yeah,
What I heard you say is when your kids fail, instead of saying, you know what, it's okay, you'll get better next time, which sounds lovely. It sounds good.
it does.
It does sound lovely. What's also true and what can also contribute to a growth mindset is something like this. I'm going to say the same thing you said, just in a little different way. You know what? Yeah. I mean, the reason why this worked out is because you didn't really, you didn't put in the effort
You can put in the
and
time,
you
right?
didn't put in the time. And I know I'm not trying to guilt you or shame you. I want us to make this a learning opportunity because now the fear is you're going to cross that line and you're going to go into guilt or shame, you
Right.
feeling me? But
Yeah.
it's like, how do we stay on that other side of the line? We're emotion coaching. So yeah, okay. So let's talk about this. What could you have done differently? All right. Is there anything I could have done differently to support you? All right. If you go back in time, what changes do you think you could have made? All right. And then now, do we rescue them from this failure? Right. Or do
Right.
we
That's
save
the
the
million
day?
dollar
Right.
question.
Mm-hmm.
Do we rescue them because we want to, but really we shouldn't? It's like some
Mm-hmm.
people do better when you let them hit
Right.
rock bottom and they have to pick themselves back up. Because if you
Yeah.
keep picking them up all the time,
Yep.
they're just going to rely on you in the
Mm-hmm.
future.
So let's everybody imagine a scenario. It could be maybe your kid forgets a coat and they leave the house
Yep.
and they're cold, or they forget their lunch, or maybe your teenager, your sophomore in high school, forgets an assignment, or maybe somebody abuses screen time. And they're
Hmm.
like, "Oh, I'm really sorry, mom. I'm really sorry, dad. I'll do better next time." And now you have a choice. Are you going to then rescue them and solve the problem, or are you going to do what we're talking about here to raise successful kids and let them reap the consequences, the
Yep.
discipline that they've brought upon themselves, and then you see yourself not as a punisher, or even as a disciplinarian, but you see yourself as a soft pillow where they're gonna reap what they've sown on their own, the natural consequences, but you're there to coach them and support them. And you see yourself also as a coach who's going to guide them to learning from this. These are the everyday nuances of how growth mindset is nurtured.
So I want to ask the family coach a question because I'm curious. How do we as parents make sure we're praising in the way this dude from Inc.com is talking about? How do we make sure we're not just, oh, you're so smart. Stop saying that. You're driving me nuts. Right?
Mm,
Like I'll get frustrated if my kids come
yeah.
to me, gosh, I'm so stupid. I'm like, well, you are if you talk like that. You are what you
Yeah.
say. So you know what I
Yeah.
mean? I'm just gonna be
Yeah.
like, I don't want to hear that. Get out of
Yeah.
my face. Like
Yeah. That's you.
negativity, I have
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
room for it. Right.
Yeah.
And then
Well,
I get
that's,
mad
yeah.
instead of being a good coach
Yeah.
sometimes.
Hoy. We all, yeah. Thanks for your honesty. And it's actually pretty common for many parents to just have struggle with having any tolerance for their kids' negativity, their whininess, their complaining, because it just really gets under their craw for a
Right.
gazillion different reasons. Well, let me share with you a couple things that the article says that
Okay.
is that Carol Dweck recommends, and we'll chat about
Okay.
that. Okay. The
All
first
right.
thing, Dweck has identified several key differences between these two types of kids: growth mindset versus fixed
Yep.
mindset. All right.
Okay. Okay.
The first one is goals. Goals. Students with a fixed mindset have had one goal in mind. All right. So, what do you think their goal is? Pop
To
quiz.
pass, succeed, to win, not to lose, but right to just like there's a line and you want to cross it, whatever that line is.
Okay.
Right? Like, oh, we're playing basketball. My goal is to win.
Okay. The kids
Instead of my goal
with
is to play hard and try my best.
yeah, you're definitely correct. What the article says here is that kids with a fixed mindset, their goal is to look smart at all times and at all costs. So they
Okay.
want to look good. And when you fail or when you try something new, it's very embarrassing. You can
Right.
look like a dummy. You might feel anxious. So why
Mm,
try new things?
right.
Why
Try.
put yourself out there? Why try really hard if you fail, it's going to hurt so much. So I'd rather really not try because then if I get an F or if I C or if I, try this new martial arts or soccer or trombone or theater or this new social group, then if I look so stupid, why would I do that?
And
That's
don't
not
do what
me.
my parenting gut tells me to do. And it would say to them, who cares what other people think? Why do you care so much?
Yeah.
That's what
Well,
I would say. But
well,
the reality
no.
is we do care for whatever reason. I
Well,
don't know
that's
why we care so much.
yeah, especially kids. So yeah, what you're doing there is you're trying to nurture that growth mindset in your kids, which is not caring what other people think of you. And that's what the article says here. On the other hand, kids, when they talk about goals with a growth mindset, they didn't care if their mistakes were revealed to their peers. And they saw this as inevitable and nothing to be ashamed of because their goal was to learn at all times at all costs. This is what the
Yeah.
research reports. And this, I see this a lot I see this a lot in all three of my kids, but I've seen this in particular a lot with my middle child who is just starting her sophomore year, and she is really bold in articulating about how she doesn't want to be in, like these other sophomore girls. I guess there's these terms. Some of it's like Sephora girls or pick me girls. She's talking to me about that. I don't want to be a
What
Sephora
is
girl. I don't
what
want
does
to
this
be a
even
pick me
mean?
girl. Yeah, Sephora girl means like it's like a trend about how these
Oh,
girls go to Sephora and they pick on makeups and they kind of dress the same way. A lot of
okay.
girls, a lot of high school
Showy,
girls
very
dress the
showy.
same way. And then a pick me girl is a term that is being used right now as like they're kind of like really interested in getting attention from boys, and so they
Oh,
really
okay.
are kind of like out there trying to get attention, like pick me. And there's other terms, labels, some are positive, some are derogatory.
So in that situation, she's looking at these groups as in like I have to be one of these groups. When the reality is you probably are like, no, you're individual. You need to be you.
No, she's saying
No.
she doesn't want to be in these groups. She
I know.
doesn't
And then
care.
correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And but what I'm saying is it sounds like there are groups out there
Oh,
and
yeah.
she knows she doesn't want to be in these two groups.
Right.
So she's probably like feeling lost. Like, am I supposed to be in a group?
No,
I don't
she's
want to be
just
in
like,
those
I
groups.
don't
Do I have to
care.
fit in somewhere?
No,
Right?
she's like, I'm just rocking it. She's like, I don't need to
Okay.
be in a group. I just want to find my friends who they are. I'm open minded. I'm not judging these other girls. She has a growth mindset set towards her life, her studies, and even for her social circles. And I'm just like,
Okay.
I'm giving you an everyday example of what a growth mindset can sound like from a sophomore girl who's just trying to figure out, social life.
Right, right, and I
Yeah,
love that. What if
yeah.
you have one of the other girls that are in this group? How do you promote them to having the growth mindset so they're not just, like, sticking with the crowd?
Oh, that's tough. Well, yeah, that's a whole
When it
different.
comes to our language, I'd
Let's
assume.
do a whole podcast on that. Like, how do we build a growth mindset in a child or a teenager that just seems so interested in being a part of a group? They don't care about anything else. They just want to be accepted.
I
Let's
mean, it
do a
probably goes back to
podcast on
this
that.
it probably goes back to this article where he was saying you could shrink this back to 1 to age 3, right? It's all about our
Mm,
language to our kids at a young age.
wow. Yeah, that's deep. That's what the article said. You can start this at a young age, and maybe that's potentially, yeah. Who knows? Who knows why this sophomore in high school is the way
I
she
just wanna
is?
make sure, we as parents are doing the best thing we can, with the information we got and are
Hmm.
not, what's the term when you praise someone on winning or losing? What do we call that? We wanna
Um,
do growth mindset coaching
yeah,
instead of
fixed
the
mindset.
whatever the opposite is,
And
fixed or
here,
whatever.
yeah, let's continue with the number two goal here, with the article talks about. So Dweck's number two, if number one is goals, how they view about goals and how they think about it. Number two is attitude towards effort and failure.
Okay,
The
right.
article writes students with a fixed mindset view effort and failure as bad things. Like,
Yeah,
why would I put so much work into that? I'll just fail. I'm stupid. I can't do that. Because the mere fact that someone worked hard or came up short demonstrates to them that the person didn't have this innate ability. Like, they're not
right.
smart, they're not good enough. Growth mindset students, on the other hand, believe that the effort was what required to unlock the ability. So that's like, I believe I can get there. I just have to work really hard. That's
Yeah.
that difference.
That's why we love watching the Olympics, right? It's these stories of these people who are just
Mm,
like average Joes busting their behind and getting in. And then you watch them win something and it's like, oh my gosh,
yeah, yeah,
like they could be
yeah,
telling themselves, I have no chance. I'm
yes,
rated 12th. They're rated 1. But like, no, no, no. I'm just going to go out there. I'm going to bust my butt. I'm going to
yeah,
have fun. And then
yeah.
sometimes you see miracles happen and it's awesome.
And I wonder how Olympic athletes feel about boredom, because the third point, the takeaway here from the article, talks about boredom and difficulty. Here's what it says: students who demonstrated a fixed mindset were more likely to complain of being bored.
Yeah.
They seem to get caught up in this cycle in which they use boredom, especially in school, the study says, as a boredom to cover up and suggest why they wouldn't try things they found difficult. Now, growth mindset students, on the other hand, looked at schoolwork as a series of challenges and puzzles to figure out. They
Yeah.
were less
That's good.
likely to complain that a teacher, of course, or another external factor was responsible for the difficulty that they had. So isn't that interesting? Boredom in like the kids, and it's like everyone's thinking to myself, which mindset does my child have right now, and
Right.
what can I do to nurture more of a growth mindset? That's what we're all
Right.
thinking. Yeah,
Well, and it goes back to my athletic, athletes conversation where it's like if let's say you're the best of the best. Let's say you're the best surfer in the world or you're the best, baseball player and you can literally win all the time. You'd get bored. If you
yeah,
keep winning, you're just like I don't have a challenge. So that's why you have to like change things up. And now you'll see these like surfers busting 360s on waves and doing things that no one ever thought about doing because they're just working on progress
yeah,
and like trying to just build whatever sport
yes.
they're in. And that's the thing is just continue to build and move the needle forward, be in progress.
Here's let's give everybody a couple creative ideas on
Okay.
what we can do to build growth and I'll tell you some things that I've done with my kids. First off, let me read the last part of this article, which is really interesting. You ready? Listen to this. Okay. Dweck says that after conducting her research, she's been known to interrupt mom she's seen in airports
Oh,
telling their babies
really?
that they're geniuses. So these moms are telling their kids, they're so smart, you're a genius. And she interrupts them, is what she says. That's funny. Yeah, you gotta be a bestseller to have the authority to do that,
I would
right?
love to be a fly on the wall in that
I would
conversation.
love to see that. Like, hello, my name is Querl Dweck. I'm a world-renowned famous person
Right.
chatting, and I would like to give you some
Psychologist.
advice. How do you
Oh,
do that to
I
a
don't
mom
know.
in an airport in a cool,
Do you
inviting
actually
way?
know what you're doing is hurting your
Yeah.
child? Be like, what?
I
Why are
thought
you in my
about doing
space? Get out
this.
of here.
I know. I've thought about doing this so many times, like just saying, "Hey, I'd love to give you some help or tips." Or, hey, how's it going? I think you're doing a great job. I can't, I've never, it would be so hard to do that, to just pull the
It's
parent
awkward.
aside. I know.
Yeah.
So, here's what she says. All right, here's a couple of ideas. Instead of praising a child for solving a puzzle or accomplishing an easy goal, Dweck suggests saying something like, this is really interesting. I've never said this. I'm sorry I wasted your time. Let's do
Oh,
something hard, something you can learn from.
wow.
Isn't that interesting?
That's really
Who
interesting.
says that?
I would never say
I
that.
would never say that.
That's so
We
weird.
should try to say it and then come
We
back
should.
next week and like,
I'm sorry. Say it again. I'm sorry. I what? I
I'm
failed you.
sorry I wasted your time.
I
Let's
wasted
do
your
something
time.
hard, something you can learn from. Yeah.
Okay.
So how would we
Instead
do
of
that in
something.
everyday life with a teenager? Because I got two. I'd be like, hey, so yeah, because I am overseeing an independent study program that I'm developing with my 15-year-old daughter. That's for a different podcast. It's very interesting. But so I would say something like, hey, okay, how did that project go? Oh, it was good. It was easy. All right. All right. Well, I'm sorry I wasted your time. I'm going to give you something a little more challenging next time. Like any teenager.
Then you're just gonna train them to be like, oh no, it was tough. It was really
Right,
hard.
right. How do you say that in a cool way? You
Right.
know, I think maybe I would say something like this, but I should probably take her advice because she's telling us to say it. So I should probably say it. But I think what would
Or
feel
maybe
more,
you note it in your mind and you just use it next time to make something more difficult. If you tell a child
yeah,
you want to make something harder on them, they're not going to want to tell you if it was easy because they don't want to do more work.
I don't know. Here's a tip. Here's what I've been doing with my kids, and I still do it on a regular basis. I'll say something like this. In fact, I did it recently, and I'll tell you what I did. I'll say, hey, you know what? I'm going to give you this challenge. I know it's going to be hard for you, but I think you can do it. So I challenge you to do this. And I'm going to circle back with you to see if you've done it.
Oh yeah,
All
tell
right.
us back. You told us that about like donating clothes or something. Did they end up doing it or the
And
movie?
I haven't circled back with them yet, and I
Okay.
will soon because
Okay.
I traveled the week we were going to do it. So now we postponed it to come back, and I will do that and come
I want
back.
to see what
So
they
yeah, if you
say.
listened before, essentially I gave the three two oldest teenagers, and then one of the teenagers' boyfriends a challenge to give money away to
Right.
an organization, a church, a cause, or to a random person to
Yep.
support them and to just have a giving attitude and a giving
It's
relationship with their
beautiful.
money.
I can't wait to hear what they say.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to make a note to
Dad,
circle
check
back
out my
with
new
you.
shoes. Oh, you got where'd you get those? Oh, just that money you gave me. Wait, you spent that on yourself? No, I'm kidding. They're not going to say that. But
No, it's actually, yeah, and keep in mind, this is their money, not my
yeah,
money.
I know. I
Yeah.
know. I know
Oh,
it is.
okay. Okay. So,
But it's just it'll be interesting to see what they say.
yeah.
I'm
So,
glad you
like,
did that. That's
you
a
could
cool
say a
idea.
challenge, like, hey, I challenge you to read this book. Or, hey, I know we're going to go to the fair later this week, but there's these two areas that I really want to see you push yourself in this week before we go to the fair. So I know you can do it. I know it's going to be hard, but you have what it takes. So that type of lingo to push your kids,
Yeah.
instead of saying you're so smart, you got this, or should be easy for
Right.
you, or what's the big deal? Say, I know it's going to be hard, but I know you have what it takes. Or, hey, if you see here's another idea. You see your kid doing something, you can say, hey, you must be really proud of yourself. That looked
Ooh, I
really
like that.
hard. So instead of I'm proud of
I'm
you,
going to
which
say
is
that
great,
today. You must be
that's
proud of
one of my
yourself.
favorite things. You must be really proud of yourself. That was really tough and you did it. I've been saying this a lot to my 8-year-old. I'd say this type of language the most with the youngest because it's just, she requires so much attention. And I'll say, hey, Kenzie, you must be really proud of yourself. You did a great job with the bedtime routine. You did this and you did this and your room's clean. I'm proud of you, but you should be really proud of yourself. I know it was hard. I know it's really hard doing this.
That's good.
Okay.
Let's all get the growth mindset mentality and use it not only for our kids, but ourselves too. We got to pump ourselves up like this
Oh,
also.
what do you mean by that? I like that. Let's close our show with
Well,
that. Tell me
like
about
a lot
that.
of the times we put this heat on ourselves, like we have to get to this bar in the workforce or we have to climb this ladder to do this. And the reality is like sometimes we look at that like it's the trophy, And
Mm,
then so often we have to remind people, look at the people who have that trophy. Are they happy? Are they having a great time? You know what I mean? Like
nice.
don't reach for that thing that could mean nothing once you get there.
Wow, that's a brilliant take. Speaking healthy success to ourselves, speaking a growth mindset to ourselves is what you're closing our show on.
Yeah.
Man, that was
And
good.
our kids. But yeah, we need to do it to ourselves too. It's all around.
Because we can't speak to our kids until we speak it to ourselves.
That's right.